Okay,
They usually don't leave and last an hour.
go ahead, Anna, when you're ready.
Okay, so I guess first is our call to order. Um, so then I guess second is, do I ask for a motion to call to order?
No, you just call to order.
Okay, call to order. So I guess the first order of business, is there any public comment?
There is not.
Okay, so next is the approval of the minutes from May 22nd.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Nice. All right. So it looks like we have old business. So there's 1023 Greenwich Street, more than 6 dogs and cats. Do we have an update on that?
So we had a meeting a few weeks ago with the ARL. Michelle was there. We went there. Nobody answered the door. We left an application for 6 or more dogs and cats, shoved it under the door, but could not make contact with an individual. We also, I do not have a list in front of me. Michelle may know the properties, but we also visited the properties on High Street, trying to verify if they still have chickens.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot get on the properties because it's private property. Again, people are not cooperative. It looks like the pens are still there, but we could not see physical evidence of the chickens and ducks still being there. There were several other properties. Again, I don't have the list, but like there was bunnies, there was a few other things. High fences, you can't verify some of this stuff. We don't see evidence. There's not much we can do. We did have one thing that I wanted to bring up, and I actually had sent it to you earlier, Michelle, and I think I sent it to you, Savannah, about 620 Mulberry Street. Did you get that email?
Yeah, can we do that later in the meeting under new business or other matters?
That's fine. That's fine. So, I mean, that's kind of the update I have with existing things. Some of it's just so hard to verify. The one on Maple Street that we have with the broken door in the bottom, we did make contact with somebody. They said they're in contact with people. We don't have verification of this yet. The house is supposed to be being fixed up through some type of federal program. But at this point, it still looks the same with the door. So if we don't see movement shortly, then we'll move to a notice of violation and go from there. They're poor people and don't have a lot of money.
So with the ones that we're not able to verify and stuff like that, is basically it just waits until there's another complaint?
At this point, that's what you would have to do. And even when there is complaints, as Savannah knows, if they won't let you in the house and it's an owner occupied home, we can't force entry into the property.
No, I was just asking just for knowledge. How
I
we
think
handle
sometimes
that.
ARL has better luck getting into the properties than we do.
And that you have to pretty much wait for a complaint to get to that point.
Yeah, and most of those ones that we talked about in the last meeting, that codes then went out and tried to do the notice for, either the complaint that we get is not valid enough for us to move forward with anything. Like if they're just calling and saying, we think they have over 6 dogs, for example, or we think that they have chickens, but we can't see anything and there's no other violation. Like it's a little easier for your properties that have unsanitary conditions and we've seen it, obviously, like stuff like that is a lot easier. But the ones where it's, I don't want to be involved, I just know that they have more than 6 animals, that's where we have a hard time. And that's kind of why we were getting codes involved to leave notices so we could try both angles. But it looks like most of them, you guys are having just as much of an issue as we were.
A lot of our problems is being property maintenance enforcement. If you go in, you're looking for unsanitary condition for animals. If they let us in the property, they could potentially have a lot more problems with the condition of the property itself. So we have a very hard time getting into some of these properties. If they're owner occupied, if they're rentals, we can get in.
Mm-hmm.
I have a real quick question. When you say, I was going to try to save it, but I might have sorry to interrupt. When you say we go in, does the animal control board like, do we actively go to houses representing the city? Okay.
No.
The ARL does it. That when you say we, you mean the ARL.
Yeah, so we'll have officers go if it's a complaint that comes through to us, and then same for property maintenance. So if they get a call, they go out and they do an inspection. So like, I know one of the properties in here, I'm gonna try to give an update on later. Our humane officers, animal control officers go in, do an inspection, and then they type their notes, they got their report, and then we bring it to the board and say, okay, this is what was found at the property. We either think very much towards yes, could be approved, or very much towards no, should not be approved, based on what the notes are from the inspection. So that's
Okay.
all on information that either ARL or property maintenance will provide.
When the gentleman said we have trouble getting in, but the ARL would be better off, who did he mean by we?
Oh,
The
Property
ARL.
maintenance.
Okay.
For them letting us in a property, there's things that we may see that we're gonna focus on, broken windows,
So
water leaks coming in the ceiling that is not as much something that the ARL is there looking for.
the gentleman on the top left sitting at the table is on the property maintenance board or committee.
It might not show up the same as all of ours, John.
The
It might be in
gentleman,
different order.
the gentleman at City Hall that's speaking, is he on the property maintenance board or
I'm
committee?
actually a property maintenance supervisor.
Okay, that's okay. All right. Now I'm caught up. Thank you.
Sure.
And John, forgive me, are you new on the board?
This is my first meeting, yes.
Okay, so I completely understand because I was exactly in your position. So, so with the reports and stuff, is it better for these ones where you can't get into and stuff like that? Because ARL has records when there is complaints. So if another complaint comes up, we'll be aware of it. So is it better to kind of close this and just wait for another complaint?
What we talked about in the last meeting, that the kind of like mini meeting that we had, because there were a lot of properties on the old business that we went through, because there were a lot that there was nothing else that we could do. Property
Right.
maintenance kind of hit a wall as well. So there were certain ones, like we had someone that list that we hadn't had complaints for like over 2 years. So we just took those off. And then in the event, like you said, in the event that we get a new call, or there's a new concern, or there's maybe the same concern, but this person has more information, or they're willing to testify and we have a little more to work with, then we can bring it back in. That's totally fine. I'm personally fine with that.
So is that something we need to make a motion for? Is these few that are on here, like the High Street properties and the Maple Street properties, move those to old business and let those close for now?
Well, the one on Maple Street, we need to keep open at this point because we
Okay.
need to see movement on the conditions of the property itself. And like I said, it's a family that doesn't have a lot of money. The one person died in the home. We're trying to give them opportunity to get to a level of compliance.
Oh,
So-
sorry, Charlie. I meant the one on Linden Street with the rabbits.
I-
That's the one that I meant, not the Maple Street one, because the Maple Street one is still ongoing.
You cannot see through the back fence. I personally did not smell anything when I was there. What it looks like is a small backyard. You can stand up and try and look over it. I did not see evidence of rabbits. I don't know if Savannah did.
Are you
or-
talking about the Linden Street one?
Yes.
Yeah, 242 Linden
Okay.
Street.
So they do have a rabbit. It does not live in the backyard. Let me rephrase. The last time we received photos from the complainant, there was a rabbit. It does live on the property, inside, outside, primarily on the back deck area, but it's the second floor. So if you're looking in the backyard, you probably won't be able to see it, but from her second floor, you can look over in the pictures she sends, and there is a rabbit there. So what I can say for that one is that it does have, and this is the issue, like this is one of those properties that we're having an issue with. So DAP goes out, attempts contact, leaves notices, nobody calls back in. Every time we receive photos of the rabbit, it looks healthy, it looks well fed, it's provided food and water, it's provided partial shelter, it's not provided a rabbit hutch, but it is provided a place to get away from the elements. So our re-putting this complaint back in, partially because this complainant is a frequent flyer complainant for a lot of reasons within the city, but also us. And we were just trying again to talk to the owners to say, hey, like a rabbit hutch would be ideal, depending on weather, but it does have partial shelter to get away from the elements. So do I think it's enough for us to say, okay, let's get a search warrant because it's lack of shelter? I don't know that we would. I don't feel confident in that. So we were kind of just continuously leaving contact notices, trying to get a hold of them. They have kind of ghosted us. Rachel might be able to give more information if there's anything that I missed, but they do have a rabbit. That's just where we sit with that specific complaint.
Yeah, that's pretty much, I mean, we've gone multiple times to and put notices and tried, to make contact with them. We had numbers for multiple people living in the home, but the numbers either don't work anymore or nobody picks up or there's no voicemail set up. So we were just going to discuss with them putting out a more adequate shelter, but at this point, no one is returning contact with us. But every time we have received pictures, the rabbit does look in good health. So
Is your biggest complaint in the smell?
From the neighbor, yes, that is, we get photos of the rabbit and emails from her on a regular basis. She usually states that there's odors coming from the backyard. She's gone as far as to going into their property and cleaning their yard for them. But on our end, there isn't much else that we're going to be able to do if they keep ignoring us. I mean, we were even gonna offer them a rabbit hutch, but like I said, it's not, if the rabbit had nothing, like no form of shelter, nothing to go into to protect itself, it would be a little different. I think we would have enough to say, okay, we probably could maybe try to get a search warrant for lack of shelter, remove the rabbit, go from there. But it does have something to protect itself from the elements. It's just not what I would personally do for a rabbit, if that makes sense.
Can't the neighbor just ask them to clean the rabbit's housing so it doesn't smell as often?
Dennis, it sounds like the neighbor is necessary, might be the issue and not so much the defendant here.
Yeah.
It sounds like, I mean, it sounds like there's some neighbor issues and it's beyond whether it's a rabbit issue or anything else. It sounds like there's neighbor issues. So I don't think that neighbor's gonna be really willing to go ask them to clean it.
Not
In all
everyone takes
honesty,
care of
we
the
could-
pets the
Go
same.
ahead.
Not everyone takes care of the pets the same. I've learned, I'm a little bit of a frequent flyer. I've met Savannah years ago and I've had the ARL go, like, people just leaving their dogs out in code blue that have short hair and stuff. And really, like, not everybody treats their pets the same, and you just have to abide by the law. Like, what is it? The thing that's tying them up has to be twice the length of their body or something like that, so they can barely move. I don't like that, but it doesn't matter what I like. There's laws in place, and the neighbor probably has to accept the condition that the rabbit's living in. And like Savannah said, Anna said, the neighbor might be the problem here.
yeah, and
Wait.
from the photos we've received, there's not an excessive amount of like feces outside. It seems it's like the normal amount of feces I would expect from a rabbit in a day, maybe 2 days. So there's not like huge piles of feces building up on the deck or, it seems like a normal amount for a rabbit. So,
And as property maintenance, we see this type of things, not only in animal complaints, but just with neighbors themselves. There's tree branches falling in my yard, for an example. Rather than ask your neighbor to cut his tree back, they'll call us and say, go out and deal with this. People are becoming antisocial in the city and they're not communicating with each other. And that is part of the problem.
Okay, so where are we at? Okay,
So I mean,
so
for Linden Street, at this point, I don't think there's anything further for us. I mean, we can continue to try to make contact when we're in the area. And if we continue to get calls, if something changes, we might have a different route there. But I mean, at this point, they're not responsive. It's not like this is a property we need to discuss or make a decision on for like any permits or anything like that because they haven't applied for anything. They don't need to. So I mean, for me, I think that if we continue to get complaints, the AP can handle them as they see fit. But for like property maintenance, I don't know that there's anything that you guys are gonna have for this unless the complainant continues to call on your end as far as like sanitation goes or the odor. But again, if they're not responsive to us, they're probably not gonna be responsive to you guys. So I don't know that there's gonna be anything that we have moving forward for this one that needs to stay on the agenda.
I agree 100%.
Real quick question, Savannah, you mentioned a warrant, so a pet has to be in deplorable conditions. And you need real proof of that, and then you can get a search warrant.
Correct. I mean, it's a
Okay.
case by case basis. Every case is gonna be different, obviously.
Right.
But the key things are either having a witness depending on what the complaint is about, or one of our officers being that witness. So, for example, if, just to briefly, I don't wanna go into too much detail about this, but like if you call and say, hey, I personally saw XYZ happen in the house, and we go knock on the door and we don't see that and they ignore us for a week and you won't testify, we're not gonna get a search warrant for that. That's not gonna be something
Right.
that will get approved by a judge, because I can't prove because you won't testify and I've never seen it. But
Right.
if we have one of those things, then usually we have a better chance, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the times I called, you guys went to the door, then they don't have the dog anymore. That was on Lorraine Road. They gave the dog to a relative supposedly, but
Okay,
thank you.
Okay, so I realized we kind of skipped along here, so I think we have to go back to old business. So we had kind of started with the Greenwich Street and the more than 6 dogs or cats, and we said basically there's no answer, and you left an application. Next would be the outdoor feeding. So it was brought up several meetings ago as far as getting a PSA out, just to kind of give the colony caretakers and the people in the city and stuff like that who are doing feeding, just kind of a recap, PSA, like a one-stop shop as far as what the guidelines are as far as feeding in the city. We did find out that it is a QLL violation if they're leaving food out and it's creating feces and stuff like that. And we had talked about working together with, I think, was it Jose was going to get something together, Savannah?
well, the notes that I had put on the last meeting update were that if we are gonna put like a PSA out about a city ordinance, it needs to come from the city. We can repost it and we can discuss, after that, but if it's regarding a city ordinance, that they would put out that specific ordinance. I know I had talked to Michelle about that too, but I had put that in my notes for this was the meeting that we missed because we had that search warrant.
Yes. Yes.
So I had sent back my notes, and in that had put kind of what the consensus was there. So that is something that we could obviously repost and discuss. We don't get complaints about that, but like anymore, we haven't for a while. But if it's clarification for the community, which I agree is 100% needed, on the city ordinance, then that public like PSA or post should come from the city regarding their ordinances, if that makes sense. That's what I had put in my notes that I sent back from when that was
Right, I
discussed.
did see that about basically the wording has to come from the city. Okay, so I mean, I think we're a little late to try to get that out this year, but I'd like to be able to see that something that we do get together, and it's more or less something that we can post on the city website or whatever and stuff each time we're getting closer to kitten season and the time when the community cats start getting a little more active, and when bugs, insects, and all that, and when the complaints start coming around.
Yeah. And if that's like a flyer that is made like by the city and posted on their website or whatever, I did talk to Jose about it, and we're totally fine with like reposting that and putting like a little post with it that says like, relative to the city ordinance, below is their information on how to handle these kind of things, just to get it out there on our end too. But it's a city ordinance, so the verbiage should come from them, just to make sure that it's correct.
Right, and I think it was quoted in the minutes and stuff in one of our minutes here and stuff, what the actual wording is for the QOL violation. Are you guys okay if I contact Jose about that directly?
About
Maren,
us like
Savannah?
reposting it?
No, just kind of coming up with something,
So that
more or
was
less.
something that the city has to do, so this is something that I need to work with Charlie.
Okay.
And our communications coordinator, and that's a ball that I've dropped, so I'll pick that back up again, and get working on that with the two of them.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure where that was kind of coming from. So thank you.
I do have one question. So if we put this out there, is this strictly something that the city will be enforcing, or does that give ARL the ability to also enforce something if complaints, multiple cats on the porch, this and that.
It's not necessarily enforcing as it is clarification and more or less putting the information in one spot so people don't have to go looking for it. Because at the beginning of the year, we had some issues with basically officers threatening to cite citizens for feeding and neighbors calling on neighbors for feeding, with feeders and stuff not really knowing what the guidelines are or where it is on the laws. So that's why if it's just more or less an informational thing saying, hey, these are the guidelines. This is what our laws or ordinances or whatever say about feeding. This is what you can do. This is what you can't do. And just more or less make it simple like that. It's not something that we're looking to it's not like a new ordinance or a new law. It's just giving the information in one spot so that officers are aware of it, whether it be police officers or whether it be, neighbors or feeders themselves. So it's just clear.
Michelle and I will get together at some point when it's convenient for her, and we'll work on that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's like I said, it's not that we're bringing any more new information. It's more putting the information in one spot that's easy to find and easy to see.
So basically, what it adds up to is the complainant would be given a paper showing what their, was required and what's right and what, they can and can't do, correct?
If the officers choose to use it that way. I mean, it's like, it may just go up there and police officers may decide that they don't want to use it or whatever, but at least it's in one spot. So the feeders are aware of what they can and can't do. So when it is said you're in violation, look, here's the information. This is what you're in violation of. Rather than having to thumb through, 20 pages of QOL violations, or is it a QOL or is it an art, what is it? And it took some time for us to even find out what it was.
And it would be good to have when we do come up with what that's gonna be, that could be something that even like our DAP team has as a flyer too, because we don't, and historically in the past have never enforced that. I mean, it took us a while to even figure out, make sure we all understood what that ordinance specifically meant and what they would get in trouble for if they did something wrong. But it would be good to have as a flyer for them to hand out for the properties that they come in contact with that are feeders, because I know like in the past when I was in the field a lot, I would at least tell people, hey, like you can feed, but make sure you're cleaning up after yourself, make sure you're doing this, make sure you're doing this. So if it was kind of all in one space, it would be helpful for them to hand out too. So hopefully we are stopping the problem from becoming a problem. We're getting ahead of it and trying to communicate that with them in the field, as well as it being posted publicly for other neighbors and feeders and stuff to see too. So that might be able to help it from both angles.
Yeah. And I think it's something that we could post like on the Berks TNR page. And it's something that, you guys can have at your TNR clinics as well and stuff so that, people who do manage colonies and everything are aware.
Yeah.
Quick question. Is there multiple issues that basically people complain about more than anything else, that they have a flyer for just those particular, things that are brought up more than others?
Most common complaints, make it like an FAQ.
Yeah, we could do that. Or it could be a separate one, or it could be, one for each thing, or, a combo if it's only 2 or 3 things. I guess Charlie and Savannah need some guidance on, like what your top issues are.
I mean, it could even be something like that where it's not specific. I mean, I do think there needs to be a specific post at least that we can repost as far as the feeding, because that's been like a hot topic. But if you're looking for something like that for like a flyer handout or something, I don't think it would be a bad idea as far as what those certain ordinances are that are specific to the city. So if you put like a blurb around the feeding and what that means and what that looks like, a blurb around you need a permit if you're over this number of animals. You need a permit if you want to have chickens or agriculture, like a little info sheet kind of about those things that we get a lot of calls about. Because a lot of people just don't know or they don't care. But most of the time it's they don't even know. We go to their house and we say, you need a permit for this, and they don't even know what a permit is. So that might be helpful. Not to add more things, but those would be the top things that I would think of. You could probably add like the leash ordinance on there too, like just the common things that come up that people aren't aware about. And it can be something very simple as far as like just breaking down like the main point of the ordinance and what that means so that people can digest it easier.
You could even
Okay.
have like a community cat feeding one and like a dog one for like
Yeah,
leash law, license,
Yeah.
picking up after your dog, those types of
Take a
things.
flyer, make it in Spanish too.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
I have that written in my notes, whatever
Yeah.
flyers we create are
What's in
gonna
the back,
definitely be
you know,
translated in Spanish back to back if they're in paper
Yeah.
form. Yeah,
for sure. And yeah, and
I
to
think-
your point earlier, Anna, I think once those things are made and decided, which it's coming from the city, so I think that's great if we work together to get that done. But it's totally fine to reach out directly to Jose or me or whoever. Like I can forward an email to him or I can share his email. Once that stuff is created, or even if it's like, hey, we think we want to post this, we need an opinion. Like he's never going to care about that. But once that's created, we can definitely, you guys can just email that to him or I or both of us, and we can get a post generated to make it public on our side of things too.
Okay. Yeah. No, it was, I guess, a miscommunication earlier when they were saying communications. I was thinking it was Jose. I didn't realize it was
Okay.
on the city.
That's okay.
end. So
Yeah,
that's
that's
why I
okay.
was offering to just kind of
Yeah.
talk to him. Okay. Next order. So I guess that kind of ties into the providing education at community events, huh? Which is the next order of old business. I think that was something you guys are working, ARL is working on also.
Yeah, and I filled Jose in from the last meeting that I physically was at, because the meeting that I missed, I did put notes in on that, my notes on that as well for that meeting. But I talked to him after that one, the last meeting that I was at, and he has communication. I'm not sure the name of the person that he specifically reaches out to or communicates with through the city, but he had said that we get invited to public events through the city and we'll attend as many as we can. And that we'll continue to communicate when we have additional events too that are going to be located in the city. So they seem to already have a good communication with that. So I'm kind of keeping that in that's kind of his support. They're just communicating if there's events they want us to come to and we're able to participate in, we definitely will.
And I don't know if this might be something for in the future and stuff like that, but maybe next year and everything, plan on, even if we have, even the city itself and stuff have like an information table or something at community events for some of the things that we're talking about. Granted, I realize that's a bigger thing, but that's why I'm saying further off.
Yeah.
But it's something to kind of just plant that seed. Zoning ordinance amendment, there's no update on that. Well, I think we had pretty much decided on not doing that amendment, correct? That was on
That is
as
a
far
different one.
as in the point system. This is a different one.
Yep, this is a different one. So this has more to do with exotic animals, specifically the more farmy type animals, so that we are specific that the owner needs to have zoning approval before
Right.
this board approves the animals. So there was some missteps a few times that the animal control board approved the animals before the zoning board approved
Right.
their ability to keep the animals. So we have to clarify that in the zoning ordinance. And that they've been focused on some other larger issues with zoning amendments. But this is in the queue. There's just no update at this point.
Okay. Got it. Okay. So new business, we kind of already covered some of this. The 1711 Cotton Street permit renewal with 5 cats, 2 dogs.
Yeah, we went and did their home inspection today. It was clean, orderly, all their animals are healthy. She has all the appropriate license and rabies for all of her animals. So as far as it goes on our end, she did pass an inspection, and I would recommend her for a permit approval.
Okay, and I do see that the permit, the application was attached to the agenda packet.
Yes.
Okay, everything looks in order. Okay, so we just need to approve that or deny that, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Looking over it, everything looks in order. I did look over and everything is up to date and current. Do I make a motion to approve that and then somebody second, or do I need somebody else to make a motion?
You would call for the motion and ask someone else to do it.
Thank you. Okay, so calling for a motion to approve or deny?
I'll second.
I'll second it too.
To approve?
Yes.
Correct, sorry, yeah, I'll second to approve.
Okay. The next one is the 242 Linden Street, which we already talked about.
You have to vote on it first.
Yeah,
Oh,
have to
I'm
vote.
sorry. Thank you. Like I said, first time.
Mhm.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 I,
I'm abstaining. I don't know what's going on here.
John is basically voting to approve
No, I
a
know.
permit renewal.
Yeah, but
Okay.
I don't know anything about permits of these. I never heard of these permits until I watched one of your meetings 6 months ago or something. So, yeah,
Okay.
I'm not saying I'm against it. I just don't.
Basically, it's rare that people apply for them unless there's been some complaints about them.
I want to bring up a guy later that's near me that has 9 Huskies. Well, I don't know how many he has, but I think you guys are already aware of him on 12th Street. But
I know who you are. You live right around the corner from me, John. I stopped you and asked you for a microchip scanner for a cat.
I thought you looked familiar, and I brought you a microchip scanner. I remember, and you found where the cat belonged. I remember that.
Yes, we did. Okay, so the next one that one's approved for the renewal, correct? Because we had a
Correct.
quorum for that, or no?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so 539 Maple, that one's the one that's ongoing, and then we have new business reports of cockfighting.
We've put our ear to the wall on that, and I have
Mhm.
not been able to come up with any new information that we can provide to you at this time.
Yeah, to my knowledge, we haven't either.
no.
The last update, the last conversation that I had was from a different agency who was getting calls, sending out somebody kind of undercover to keep an eye on things, but we have not gotten any calls. I have not gotten any updates from them, so I don't know that they have found anything. And just looking at some of the complaints we have gotten regarding chickens recently, none of them were anything that were raising any like red flags that it was giving cockfighting. So I wouldn't have any additional update on our end for that.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but a few meetings ago and everything, didn't we discern that it was not okay to have roosters within the city?
Well, it's
I
not
remember that
okay to
wrong.
have any type of farm animal within the city under zoning. Roosters, chickens, doves, any type of farm animal is not allowed in the city under zoning. In the past,
Okay.
some permits have been approved that kind of bypass the zoning, so we're getting back to going through zoning first.
Okay, I was just curious because a couple weeks ago I heard a rooster at my house, and I was like, "Wait a minute, I thought that wasn't allowed," but
Yeah.
haven't heard
It's
them lately
not.
though. Okay, so moving on to expiring permits. Permit for 1034 Court Street looks like the permit is no longer needed.
correct.
And then there's the 2 High Street ones, which you said pretty much you're not able to get access to. Is that correct?
That's correct. The way the properties are set up, you cannot see, you can see that the coops are there, but there's no evidence of actually chickens that I can see.
Okay. And then the 732 Thorn Street chickens.
Again, everything that was there, we can't say for sure right now.
Okay. I know you had mentioned the High Street earlier. I didn't know that Thorn Street was one of them. Okay. So that just they will pretty much expire until we hear from somebody?
Yes.
Okay, next, other matters.
So I had brought up, I believe it was 620 Mulberry. They put a
Yes.
flyer out, which I had emailed to Michelle and I think Savannah.
Yeah.
They're running a cat sanctuary type of thing, a rescue. I don't know if that's on your radar. It is in an R2 area, which that type of thing is not allowed in that area. It would be considered a kennel. I spoke with zoning. The only place that that's allowed is in an MC area. So this just came in today, so I did not have a chance to follow up on anything yet. I just forwarded you what I had at this point.
Yeah. So we are aware of her property. We actually talked about her property in previous meetings. She has surrendered a significant amount of cats with us over the years, however, has, to my knowledge, never actually submitted a permit. Our last dealings with her started around November of last year up until January of this year, where she surrendered a bunch of cats. She's typically cooperative, lets us in to do an inspection. The last few times we were at her property, I would say that she would have passed a home inspection. However, does have over the limit in her home. So at this point, unless she somehow got under the limit, which I highly doubt, she's probably right now over the limit, does not have a permit. I know that this one was forwarded over to codes back in January. But I don't know if there was any additional complaints that you guys got regarding her up until now. And I can't remember, I apologize, if we had talked about this one since then.
So go ahead.
But I was just gonna say, I mean, she has always passed the home inspection previously. Her cats have been healthy. She gets vet care when she needs it. The concern would be over the limit, and now also apparently trying to run a rescue.
We did have notices of violations late in 2023 as far as December. They were complied, and it was for animals. We have not really had any interaction since then, except for what I just sent you guys today. So like I said, there was no chance to investigate this, but because I just got the information today. And this is there's another owner occupied property, which she's owned for years.
Mhm.
So as far as codes is concerned, she's not going to be cooperative.
I mean, we could talk about, and this is something we can talk about after the meeting, if you want to set up a time to try to go with one of ARL's officers to do an inspection again, because it's been a few months, and just kind of re-pop up, like, hey, we saw you're posting about this. How many do you have? You know that you need to have a permit. See what the vibes are. If that's something you want to do, we could do that.
we could do that, and based on the thing that I sent out to you today, the flyer, zoning is going to send them an enforcement letter because they're advertising something that's not allowed.
Right.
It doesn't have a lot of meat, but maybe it'll do something.
Charlie, are they actually advertising as a rescue?
Well, I sent it. Savannah, did you read that?
Yeah, I saw your email earlier. It's I can pull it up.
Yeah, because I don't have it here right now. I'm on my own
It's
computer.
called Tabby's Cat Rescue. It's a Facebook. She has a Facebook page. Tabby's Cat Rescue is the page. So yeah, I mean, I think at this point, because it's been a few months and we haven't gotten any complaints about her recently, to my knowledge. Rachel, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've gotten any additional complaints about her.
What was the address for it?
This one's for
620
Tiffany.
Mulberry. Sorry.
Yeah, 620 Mulberry Street.
No, we have not had any.
Now, Charlie, was it brought up to your attention by somebody notifying you, or you just somebody's happened to see it on Facebook and reported it?
Well, actually, I'm the health supervisor for the city, so anything that comes in regards to animals gets given to me. And this came in via mail. So the girls in the front put it in my box, and I saw it in my box today. So I have no idea where it came from, who it came from.
So I'm sharing it on my screen for anybody who is looking, and I will also forward this email out to the group.
Okay.
But it, like I said, zoning is sending enforcement out because it's not a use that's allowed in an R2 district. But again, this is somebody that I know has had problems in the past, so is she gonna
Yeah.
listen to that? I don't know.
I mean, I would say that she has been cooperative with us over the years to an extent. I mean, she has allowed us in the home, and she will do a surrender to a point. She gets to a point where she wants to surrender everything, and then that's going to my sisters, that's going to my brothers. I want to keep that one. That one's going to my cousins. That one's going here. Has placement for stuff, but then we go back and they're all still there. So I think that my personal opinion would be based on the time frame that has passed. We have not gotten any complaints, which is why we have not had any additional contact with her since it was sent to codes in January. Now that we're getting this information, I do think it would be warranted to do a follow-up on our end. Because I think there's multiple components here, so I think it's totally fine if zoning does their thing. I'm fine with us having an officer go attempt contact again and just say, hey, it's been a couple months, we're getting calls that now you're running a rescue. That's a different thing, but we need to know how many are in your house. What are your intentions? Are you trying to apply for a permit and go through that process again? She knows that she needs one. We have physically handed her multiple copies in the past. She knows the rules. So I'd be fine with us doing another follow-up with this new information if that's the consensus.
And I have no problem, you know, with sending one of the health inspectors along with, as long as we all can coordinate a time.
Okay.
Savannah, is there any rules statewide as far as setting up a cat rescue?
If it were dogs, yes, but it's a little different with cats. You're better off going off of like what the ordinance is. But yeah, I mean, if she was doing this with dogs, she'd have to have an actual kennel license. But that's not required for cats.
Hmm.
So her biggest issue, like Charles said, is gonna be the zoning and then also the over the 6. So that's where I would say we could start. So Rachel, you can just write that one down on like somewhere so that you guys can follow up on that one then.
Yeah, I have it
this
written
week.
down to put it in for a follow-up.
Cool.
Okay, any other matters?
We recently got one regarding 952 North 10th Street. It's somebody who called us stating this person has 16 plus cats living in the basement. The owner apparently moved out of the apartment complex, but didn't have anywhere to take his cats, and the landlord felt bad for him, told him he could keep him in the basement. So there's apparently a lot of cats down there. We left several notices and he never contacted us. But just walking up to the door and around the basement area, there are definitely cats down there. The ammonia is incredibly strong in that area. So, just something else to put on your radar. He hasn't returned any contacts from us, but I do think he has a decent number of cats in there. I don't know if it's worth trying to find out who like the landlord is and seeing if maybe they'd let us in or something like that. But we haven't been able to contact the owner.
And you said, what's that address again?
That is 952 North 10th Street.
North 10th. I can look that up tomorrow to find out, you know, is it owner occupied? It is a multi-unit building.
Okay.
I can look it up tomorrow. I don't have the information here now, obviously.
Okay.
Yeah, because especially if they're in the basement and that kind of ammonia, that kind of smell and everything else coming from the basement, I worry about the health of those cats.
Yeah.
Well, and obviously any other residents that live there.
Yeah. Yeah. So there are other people living in that building as well that can smell it. So
You can hook them up with that person that's doing cat rescue.
There you go.
Yeah, they're only a few blocks apart.
Yeah, that's like 5 blocks, only 5 block down to Mulberry and.
Yep.
Or up to Mulberry.
Over and down. Over and down. Any other matters?
Is there any scoop on 1505 North 12th with the Huskies? He told me that he was in court with the city. I've seen 9 Huskies on his porch. not recently, but they were out consistently on Route 12,
They've been
running,
getting out pretty regularly.
reportedly killed a Chihuahua that an elderly individual was walking, just ripped it apart right in front of the guy.
I mean, we have history with the property. This person has been cited in the past. So if there's new complaints, we have not gotten any new complaints from anybody. The last complaint our department has received is June 24th of 2023. So if there's new things occurring, we have not been made aware.
They've been loose a bunch of times since then. The last time there was a husky out in the neighborhood, I contacted him and he said, "No, I finally have him totally secure." He'd always come up with a dumb excuse. Everybody does.
Yeah. So like for confinement and control, for example, if we have a complaint with a dog at large and we have a caller who says, "Hey, I saw this black and white dog with a blue collar running down 12th Street yesterday at 4 p.m. and I'll testify to it." Great. Go to the property, say, "Hey, was your black and white dog with a blue collar running down 12th Street?"
Right.
Yeah, it was. We cite him, we call you, you come and you testify, you say it was running at large. We go to court, judge makes the decision, guilty, not guilty, whatever, right?
Okay. Wow. I didn't know.
You can also send in pictures. So like if the person's like, "Hey, I saw this happen," and it shows on my Ring camera that the dogs, like all the huskies are
Yeah.
running down the street on the Ring camera, you send that to us, we can cite for confinement and control. And then we send that in as, I mean, you'd still testify as a witness, but we would send that in with. So it just helps if we have like a photo, a video showing that it's at large, because then it's not one word against the other.
Well, I have
Which-
people sending me and messaging me like I'm like the Northeast Reading dog person. They're messaging me and then I'm calling him and I'm telling him where they are. They usually split up into like 2 or 3 groups. Last time they were bleeding, a couple of them were bleeding. And he just has no business having the dogs in a property that size, and he doesn't walk them, and his yard stinks. But okay,
I would suggest that when that stuff is coming to you, that they contact our department to file a complaint. And if they have photos of the dogs or videos of the dogs, they submit that with it. The issue that normally comes with these is 9 times out of 10, the call is, "All the dogs are running loose, but I don't want to be involved," hangs up. "All the dogs are running loose, but I don't have any proof," hangs up. So at that point, it's one word against the other. We can still do a wellness check, give a new, warning, say, "Hey, this apparently keeps happening," but if we don't have people to go to court with us, it's just our word against his. So that's usually the hardest part about it, but I would highly recommend, if they're messaging and bothering you about it, that you tell them to call into us and file it and send in any photos. And then one of the Rachels can go out and make contact again. Like I said, we have history, we've been there before, I know the property, I understand your frustration. That's just
John,
usually
you
the
can-
basic thing.
You can put it back on them too and say, "Hey, if this really bothers you and concerns you, these are the steps that need to be taken to change it."
100%,
And put it back
yeah.
and say, contact ARL, be willing to say you saw this,
Right,
because it's not fair that it comes all down on your shoulders either, John.
yeah.
well, every time I'm like, I just want to get these dogs safe. I want to get them safe, but then they're not really that safe. They're back to him. But honestly, it's
Right,
been
and
at
it's a
least
Band-Aid.
months.
It's
That's
a
like
Band-Aid.
record.
You
What's
get
that?
them, I said it's like a Band-Aid. You get them
Yeah,
safe for
yeah.
now. But what about the next time and the next time? One of those times they're not going to be safe. And that's why if these people are going directly and making the complaints and being willing to say, "Hey, I saw this," or whatever, it's going to eventually lead to the dog's safety. Where at this point, it's a roll of the dice whether they're safe every time they get out.
It's
Yep.
been a couple months, so maybe he did something. I don't know. Maybe he did something.
And I mean, as far as property maintenance goes, this address does not ring a bell. If somebody has an issue, call our customer service department so something can be logged. A lot of times we have meetings and stuff and people talk about things, but when I go to follow up on them, there's
Right.
nothing in our system.
Right.
And I know it might be frustration thinking, "Oh, nothing will get done," or anything like that. Well, of course, nothing's going to get done if nothing is set.
You got to start somewhere, right?
Right. Okay, any other new business or other matters?
We go.
Okay.
I have something that might be off topic, and maybe I can talk to one of the ARL ladies afterwards, but just tell me. So somebody dumped some gerbils in the woods yesterday. You guys might have heard about this up off Oak Lane. And I walk dogs up there and I'm working and one person contacted me. They found gerbils in a container. They work for the Reading School District. One of the schools wants to adopt them. They're gone already. And then I came across 3 more in a cage in the woods, and I got like a big runaround from someone at the ARL about coming to get them. Isn't a contained pet that doesn't belong to me responsibility of the ARL to come pick up?
If it's a stray animal, yes. However, we do ask if people have transportation to get them to the shelter. But yes, if they do not have transportation or can't get them to the shelter and it is a stray animal, then yes, we will pick them
Yeah,
up.
they came. They made it sound like it was going to be a couple days or something like that, but they came a half an hour. I just went. I said I have to work and I have my kids' football. I can't, and they came. Okay, I just wanted to double check. I was pretty sure that was the. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. If it's a stray animal, then yes, we can provide that pickup service. What we do tell people though is we don't have a full department anymore. Like we have a smaller department now. I shouldn't say full. It's not the same amount of people it used to be. It's basically cut in half.
Right.
So there are some days where there's only one person in the entire department covering the whole county. So we do still obviously provide that service for contracted areas, pick up the stray animals. However, there are some times where there is a wait, and we do ask people, and this is nothing that has been new or changed in any of the contracts. It has always been a rule that if people have transportation, we ask them to get them to the shelter. And if they cannot get it to the shelter, they don't drive, they can't get it to us, we'll send somebody out. There are just some times where there might be a wait. If we have one officer on and they're on the other end of the county, it might
Right.
take them an hour to get there.
Right.
So they do still provide that service. We just don't have 4 officers on shift every single day, to station at different parts of the city, unfortunately, or different parts of the county, unfortunately.
People love dumping animals in those woods. Cats, dogs. Never a gerbil before, but yesterday was
Yeah.
5 gerbils.
Yeah.
So. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've handled new business, old business, other matters. So I guess next is a meeting date.
Well, basically, we need to adjourn, right? And then set up a meeting date, correct?
No, you're jumping.
I'm
That's the
jumping.
next, yes. Next is adjournment after we set the next meeting date. That is, I'm going by the rules here.
Just trying to
So-
get into this kids game.
I have a real quick
Which we'll get
question.
there.
Do I need to like do anything? Like what besides come to the meetings? Like, is there any? I
No,
mean, I read the duties and responsibilities. I read all over all the paperwork. I just keep being
Basically,
advocate for
yeah.
animals, or what's that?
Basically, it's like you wait for the next meeting and then Shelley will send out any correspondence between now and then. Usually there's not much between meetings until we get close to the meeting. She'll send out the agenda packet. What I usually do is like before the meeting, I'll read over the past minutes and the old business and stuff. So I'm prepared for the meeting. But yeah, and just if there's, anything that comes to mind that I'm learning as I go too.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so when do you want to have a new meeting?
Do you want to, we've been doing like every other month or every third month, quarterly, to give Charlie and the ARL time to do some of these follow-ups? Or do you want to, sometimes we leave it open-ended and when they have enough business to bring forward rather than bringing everyone together, for 1 or 2 things. Then I
We're
will
in
send out an
August
email
now.
for-
We're in August now. Does it make sense to try to have one before the holidays? Just to kind of tie up any loose ends if anything does come up, unless anything comes up between now and then?
Yeah, we could probably do like towards the end of the year, like before Christmas, if that works. And then depending on what happens with the Tiffany Yob case, I don't foresee her being somebody who we're gonna have to meet and talk about a permit. I don't think she's gonna get down. Like, I don't think that's gonna be the option, but if it does happen that way, I can, or Rachel or somebody can send an email and we can get enough people together to discuss that case beforehand. But if we don't have enough to discuss, then we could just plan to meet before the year is up, if that works.
Okay, how does everybody think? Do it before the year's up or at once the new year begins?
I say
When you-
before, but I'm new.
I'm sorry, what did you say, John?
I say before, but I'm brand new. I'm 57 minutes into this thing, so I don't know.
Yeah, basically, I think under the animal control thing, it says like every 6 months. But
Or as needed.
that can vary unless there's something that comes up that we need to vote on in
How about
between.
early December?
Everybody's sounds like everybody kind of likes December.
Yeah.
How about like Michelle, if you could pull Shelley, if you could pull people for like middle of December, does that make sense? Like it's early enough before Christmas, but far enough from Thanksgiving?
Sure. Yep, I can do that.
I have one more real quick thing that's been on my mind for a long time before I was with you guys. And it's not, I'm not looking for an answer, just something to think about. Could anything, and I know it probably falls under the state, but what is the state doing for the city of Reading with this matter? What can the city of Reading, through this board, do to take the weight off of some weight off the shoulders of the ARL and all the local rescues when it comes to backyard breeding in the city of Reading? I know it's a worldwide problem and we can't do shit about the rest of the world. And I'm not looking for an answer, just like people are just selling dogs on Facebook and most of them are ending up at the ARL or or what, you know what I mean? And the
Is
ARL,
that
like, we're full. Okay, we're not full. We're full. We're full. And all of the dog and cat problem right now is worse than it's ever been. And you guys know that. So it's just something I
well,
want to think about. I'm not. Okay, go ahead.
a lot of it I think was COVID related.
Oh yeah,
And because the vets were shut down for so long and spaying and neutering wasn't taking place.
very much so, especially with cats.
The backyard breeding and things like that, is that more an animal control thing or is that more of a dog ward?
It would depend on how many they're having a year. I mean, I think the ordinance is supposed to kind of be curbing that and supposed to be stopping people from breeding because puppies count as part of your limit. Puppies and kittens count. So, unless people are reporting it to us while there's puppies in the home and we can go and say, hey, you're over the limit, but that's now how we ended up with 100 puppies right now, is because we got all these calls about people over the limit who were breeding, and now we have all of their puppies. So that's kind of what the ordinance I feel like is supposed to be helping with, but people are just,
Do they get a fine, or they just will say they want to surrender, or how does that?
They'll
if they-
usually surrender.
if they want to surrender, we've been working with them just because they can't have them and they are over the limit. So once they're old enough, we have been taking them as a surrender, but anyone that we've taken puppies from in the city, I have advised, if they continue doing this, I am going to send them over to codes for a notice of violation because they continually are having puppies. So far, everyone that we got these puppies from, they were first time offenders. So, we offered them the surrender. They did all call me and give them to us as soon as the puppies were old enough. But if it continues, they have been told they will be sent to codes if they continue to breed.
Okay.
And part of the problems that codes has is we're limited to what the ordinances of the city are. So if we're having specific problems relating to breeding or something like that, some of the ordinances may need to be updated to reflect those particular problems.
I mean, maybe that's a good thing too for you, John, if you want to try to figure out something between now and then and anybody correct me if I'm wrong, but, make suggestions or try to, research it and find some suggestions on what would work better. What kind of ordinances could we suggest to the city and everything else that would make it better? I mean, right now, the only defense we have or the only, ammunition we have is people speaking up and making the complaints. And maybe if they keep doing it and everything else, people who continually keep breeding, maybe they will eventually stop. Now, granted, that's a big maybe.
The
But
city's
right
gonna
now,
say this
they've
falls under
figured
the
out.
state.
Yeah, right now they have figured out a way to work within the system.
And-
Once they get caught within that system. They figured out a way to get themselves out of that. And unfortunately, it's the ways our ordinances are written. There's not a heck of a lot that can be done.
And,
So many
and
of these dogs are not selling for, they're not selling for a lot, then they don't sell at all, and then they just go to their relatives or they dump them or whatever. That's, I just don't.
Right. And then they start right all over again.
Right.
I cannot
I mean,
remember a time where property maintenance actually received a complaint for somebody breeding. That must be going to ARL directly.
Usually the complaint isn't normally that they're breeding. Like, no, people don't call us and say like, hey, my neighbor is having a litter of puppies. I don't want them to breed, or that they're suspect of a backyard breeding, or they have more than 6 animals. So the complaints are
Okay.
coming in. They have too many animals in the house because they have these litters. They're over the limit, and that's how we're addressing it. But I'm always all for discussing, and if there's things that need to change with the ordinance and things that we can make better for the city, like 100%, we'll always support that. We should just also take into consideration that we could change the ordinance and say, for example, like you can't have more than 2 litters in a year or whatever, similar to what it would be if you needed to get a kennel license, for example. We will not be able to, it'll be very, very hard for us to prove that. So John, to your point, as far as sometimes if it's relating to over the limit, yes, we can get involved, and that's kind of our ballpark. If they're like, I have one mom and she had 4 babies and she's under the limit, and at any given time they have under 6, there is absolutely nothing we can do. There's no way I can say you can't continue to breed her. You can't, like, I can't force them to do anything, right?
They have the
Now-
right to do that, to breed
Correct.
it.
Now, if it's
Ordinance where you had to pay a certain amount every year to breed, very hard to
Right.
enforce. You got
right, so it's similar to the dog warden being able to enforce that a property has over the limit and they're required to have a kennel license. So if Rachel has a property that's like a well-known property, they keep turning out puppies, whether it's in or out of the city, we'll reach out to the dog warden and say, hey, just so you know, I have a report from February of this year, and they had these, 20 dogs, and now I have a report from August and they have 20 different dogs. They're over the limit of what you need to have a kennel license. So that's we can prove we have a documented list and names of these dogs. I can submit that to the dog warden, and they can go do an inspection and say, in the calendar year, you've had over 26 dogs. You're now required to get a kennel license, and they can handle that. So they have a little more meat with that. The issue that we have, and the reason that hardly ever happens, is because it's hard for them to prove how many moms, litters, how many dogs you've had through your property in a calendar year. So I'm not saying it's not possible. I definitely think we could talk about better ways to word the ordinance to prevent some of these things from being a problem. However, we also should just take into consideration, not that it should change the decision, but like the feasibility of us being able to enforce something like that. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. People have privacy rights and you got row home after row home after row home with high fences, basements. You're not doing DNA tests on these puppies to find out where you know what I mean?
Really, the only way to
That's
prove
why
like
it's-
what their number is if we have history there and we've been there on multiple occasions, and by occasion 3, you're over whatever that number is that we decide, right? And I can say, well, based on the 2 histories you had, Mama had a litter in February, a litter in March. You know what I mean? Like, your 3 dogs had litters back to back. That puts you over this number. Now I can prove you had this many. If I don't have that information, it's the first time you're calling about this property. They might have 3 dogs that they're breeding. They have 3 litters of 3 different ages, but they're under 26. There's nothing, like, unless it's over the limit for the city, right? If we're taking that out of the equation. For a kennel license, it's not required. So it's frustrating, for sure.
And John, the other thing you have to keep in mind too is any kind of changes in the ordinance or anything like that, we have to look at the other side of it too, is how is it going to be enforced? How is it going to be monitored? Where's the manpower going to come from that's going to be able to tackle that?
And while there's a component of people who, yes, are intentionally breeding, intentionally using it for profit, intentionally wanting to do it, there's also people that we come across who don't want to have a litter of puppies, but come across it because they're not smart about having a male and a female, and they think, well, they were litter mates, they're never going to have a litter. Yes, they will. But they can't afford spay and neuter because it's very expensive. So they accidentally get a litter because they're not smart about keeping them separate. So there's definitely different scenarios that play into it. Like there is the intentional people who are doing this for a profit, but there's some that just simply can't afford to spay and neuter their animals. And while obviously we and amongst other places try to offer lower cost spay neuter, sometimes that's still not enough. People can't afford anything. And there's not many places that will do it for no cost or anything like that. So like, would that make a big difference in the city? 100%. But it's, you know, making that work. It's definitely another topic or discussion.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, tough.
Okay, we got the motion, we got the date. I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we are adjourned. So until December, ladies and gentlemen.
Nice meeting everybody.
All
Nice to
right,
meet
thank
guys.
you, everyone.
Thank you guys.
Hey,
Thank
Anna,
you.
Yeah.
so COVID adoption, dog